Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Vorkosigan Saga, Book Something, Ethan of Athos, chapters 5 and 6. In these chapters, we find out that newts are evidently on the menu in our futures. Honestly, it could be worse. And there's also something else on the menu. A very bad, very dead man. Enjoy, newts, I guess. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Jeff for commissioning this episode. What's up, Jeff? This is shaping up to be a very good time, y'all. I am having so much fun with a character who is so distinctly different from Miles. And honestly, somebody that I actually kind of relate to a little bit more. Like, Miles is so daring for reasons that I genuinely don't understand, if I'm just going to be honest. Like, he just decides to jump into shit on pure impulse for the let's just see what happens. And that's just not me. I am very much see what happens. You know what could happen if we just didn't do that? Is we could have a nice soft bed and a reasonable meal and kick back for an hour or two and watch some television. That's what could happen. And I feel like that's a very satisfactory outcome. Let's just stick to the plan, shall we? And Miles, your bro is very easily bored. Ethan is much more like, I have a job to do. I will do it. And then I will be done. And then I will do my own things on my own time. Because rules. Honestly, I get it. I really relate. And he gets so frustrated in these chapters. But you guys, there is a moment where later on, he thinks he's being held captive. And he finds out in a moment that Ellie isn't even locking the door of the room that he's being kept in. And your boy, he doesn't run away. He just stands in the hall for 20 minutes, unsure of what to do before just going back inside. And as much as I want to be infuriated with him, I just so deeply understand on a gut level why he is reacting that way and how you would feel like this is a trap, this is too easy, or you'd have suspicions that don't even really make sense. I get it. And overall, I feel like the fact that this writer is able to pinpoint that sort of behavior, it's a talent to be able to write such different people with such different personalities and really make them all feel like genuine, whole people. So I'm impressed, is what I'm saying. But let's begin. So, he falls asleep, gets woken up by Commander Quinn. And she's got coveralls and a pair of boots that he is going to wear for disguise. When he tries to say, aren't people going to notice us? She's like, they absolutely will not when you're in that outfit. No. At least he no longer felt as if his brains were suspended in syrup in a jar. The world parted around him now with no more than natural clarity, and colors did not flash fire in his eyes, nor leave scorched trails along his retinas. This was fortunate, as the stationer coveralls Quinn had brought him to wear over his Athosian clothes were bright red. But waves of nausea still pulsed slowly in his stomach like moon-raised tides. This, it will surprise no one who knows me, bothered me that after all of this and getting him a uniform to sneak around in, a bitch didn't bring him food. Girl, I am going to need you to bring a man something to fucking eat. It's been like, we're probably going on a full 24 hours at this point, and bruh has had a candy bar. I mean, come now. So they go into this chamber where there's all these carrots that are in hydroponic growing. And this is so like interesting to me because again, it's the sort of thing that we haven't actually seen the mechanics of in this universe really. It like just the way in which the food supply is maintained in different places. Um I am I just can't help finding the what's the word I want? I guess the logistics. The logistics of everything fascinating, especially because like there are times where I'm interested in logistics because there is a sense for me of a writer kind of quickly throwing out a world building thing but not exactly thinking it through, and not so that it's like a problem as a reader, but more that you can recognize when you're reading, okay, they only had like a very sketchy idea of how that worked when they wrote it, right? And I really really enjoyed this like moment here where I felt like I want to know the logistics because I trust that she as an author has thought this stuff through. It's the opposite, where I'm not interested in logistics because I want to hear myself wildly fan what's the word? Fan wanking. It's because I actually want to hear the answers because I believe that she has answers. I actually think that she knows, like if I were to ask a couple of different weird questions here and there, that she would probably be like, oh, because this. And that is what is so different about her writing to a lot of others. And that's not even a criticism exactly to those other writers because I don't really think it's always necessary to think through absolutely everything. But it is, I think like when over the years, as I've been covering a lot of things for Unspoiled and Spoil Me, I have grown to feel like there is a real distinct energy to some books versus others that causes them to feel like they are a real, genuine, fleshed out world, and others to not feel like that. And I have had a hard time upon occasion really pinpointing what it is that makes it feel real, and why when somebody else has also got pretty well outlined ideas that their world seems somehow not completely put together, that it's not something I believe in. I've never had that with this universe. It just, I fell into it and I believed it all right away. And I think part of it is because she seems to have answers. So anyway, um she gets him a carrot to settle his stomach and he's like looking at it and just puts it in his pocket. Maybe later. I love this moment so much, you guys. They rose past a dozen stacked banks of growing vegetables to take an exit high in the chamber wall. No admittance, it said in glowing green letters. Quinn ignored the admonition with a verve bordering, Ethan thought, on the antisocial. Oh God, I am another thing that's like really tricky that she has managed to do here. It is hard to write a character who is this sort of like this much of a rule follower and this anxious in general, and have them not be a little bit of a drag to read. And he isn't, he is just delightful. I just enjoy him so much. So I can't, I really, oh, someday, guys, someday I'll write and it'll be good. I swear, someday. Um, I can use the extra pair of hands, but be prepared to move on my order when the chance comes. uh, it was like stepping into a chamber beneath the sea. Viridescent lines of light and shadow waved and scintillated across the floor, the walls. Ethan gaped at the walls. 3-story high, transparent barriers held back clear water stuffed with greenery and pierced with brilliant light. Millions of tiny silver bubbles galloped merrily through the minute fronds of aquatic plants, now pausing, now streaming on. An amphibian fully half a meter long pushed through this underwater jungle to stare at Ethan through its beady eyes. Its skin was as black and shiny as patent leather, striped in scarlet. It shot away in a spray of silver to vanish in the green lace. Oxy CO2 exchange for the station. The algae is bioengineered for maximum oxygen generation and CO2 absorption, but of course it grows. So, to save having the chambers down half the time while we bale hay, the newts, specially bred, crop it for us. But then, naturally, you end up with a lot of newts. She broke off as a blue-suited technician shut down a monitor at a control station and turned to frown at them. She waved at him cheerily. "Hi, Dale. Remember me, Ellie Quinn? Dom told me where to look you up." His frown flipped to a grin. "Yes, he told me he'd seen you." He advanced as if he might hug her, but settled on a bashful handshake instead. Now, you guys, I just wanted to take a moment here and point out that it's kind of funny because it's not remarked on in such a ham-fisted way, but part of what Ethan has been taught about women is how dangerous they are and how they can ensnare you with their wiles, whatever the fuck that means. And it's happened now twice right in front of his face that she has managed to like charm a man because she is pretty and she has been flattering toward them and very friendly and like not quite a flirtatious way. There's a slight like edge to it that I think she's very purposely leaning into. But it doesn't really seem as if Ethan is realizing that's what's happening. And that's what I kind of find amusing is like, even though Ethan has been warned about how women can manipulate men with this sort of dire tone, like it's magic, when he is around her, she does not have this effect on him at all because there's evidently no attraction. And when it is happening in front of him to other men, he doesn't seem to be clocking it. And I think that is very funny because you'd think that he would be all the more suspicious about it, actually, right? That he would be like really watching her interactions with men to see the kind of befuddlement that women are able to cast over men in action, just out of the curiosity for it. And yet, he doesn't really seem to be like putting two and two together that what he is seeing is that actually. So I found it funny because like this is the second time and the guy has been in both cases irritated at being hailed and then he like rests eyes on her and is instantly like never mind, hello there, and he doesn't seem to realize that's what's going on at all. And I just think that's sort of charming, you know, like that he is so inured to this that even when the thing he has been warned about his whole life is occurring in his face, he is so in like unmoved by it personally that it doesn't occur to him that it could happen to anybody else either. Um, so anyway, she has warned Ethan not to talk because his accent will give him away. So she and this dude chat for a while here. Dale. I don't remember. Have we met Dale before? Because the name Dale is ringing a bell, but I can't remember who he is in the scheme of things. But anyway, they chat for a little while about the fact that like she has some friends that have never tried newt, and they go through all of these different newt like meals. And later on, she tells Ethan that, oh yeah, we like sell these as top quality, like top grade frog's legs to the real snobby patrons, which Ethan sort of has a qualm about because he feels that this is unethical. But she points out that when people are rich snobs, ethics don't factor into ripping them off. And I support that. I really like it. So I just wanted to register my approval of that overall. Um let's see. Uh they go through one food after another, and then when he says newt nuggets, she stops and is like, "What?" The latest thing. They're really boned leg meat, chopped, reformed, and fried. Oh, I'm relieved. For a moment I was picturing some form of newt organettes. And it's funny because to me, newt nuggets, that's not the last thing that they are going to come up with. That will be the first thing. Any meat that is sort of like unfamiliar to people, I really believe the first thing that you do to try and make it seem a little bit more palatable is you make it into nuggets so that it's like there's an evenness to the overall texture. You know, there's just a kind of camouflage with the breading so that the flavor is a little bit like evened out by something familiar like garlic and breadcrumbs, whatever. I just could, as somebody who loves to eat, I couldn't buy the fact that Newt Nuggets would be such a late arriver. So, I thought if you were about due for the culling this shift, you might spare me a few to freeze and take back with me, assuming you're not short. We are never short of newts. Help yourself. Take 100 kilos. Take 2, 3. 100 would be plenty. All I can afford to ship. Make it a treat for officers only, eh? He chuckled and led her up a ladder to an access port. Ethan skittishly followed her come along gesture, bringing up the float pallet. So they go into this other chamber, and there is a cage that comes out filled with newts. Oh, Lord, yes, full house. Sure you don't want to feed your whole army? What if I could? Tell you what, though, I'll trot the excess down to disposal once I pick out my choice. Does Francine's Lounge need any? No orders this shift. Help yourself. He opened a housing over a control box, did something. The newt trap rose slowly, draining water, compressing the wriggling black and scarlet mass. Another motion at the controls, a buzz, a blue light. Ethan could feel the nimbus of a powerful stun beam even where he stood. The mass stopped writhing and lay still and shining. I appreciated that Ethan spends a lot of time in these chapters worried about the fate of these newts. Eventually, they are going to be launched into space and freeze. So they will die pretty quickly. But it's distressing. I get it. So he removed the carton, replaced it with another, and repeated the process. A third carton did not quite make it to full capacity. The tech entered the exact biomass removed from the system into his computer log. Want me to help you pack the canister? Nah, go on back down to your monitors. I'm going to sort through these by hand a bit, I think. No point shipping any but the best. Find him some nice juicy ones. So she turns to Ethan and is like, okay, let's make these numbers match. Help me get that dirt sucker up on this scale. Uh, so they have to. This is, you guys. Okita had stiffened, wedged in the canister. The mercenary woman stripped him of clothes and a variety of lethal weapons and made them into a compact bundle. Ethan shook off the paralysis of his confusion to attempt a task he at last felt sure of and weighed the corpse. Whatever this madness was he had fallen into, it threatened Athos. His original impulse to escape the mercenary woman was becoming, in his gradually clearing head, an equally strenuous desire not to let her out of his sight until he could discover somehow everything she knew about it. So let's see. Get him into one of these cartons and fill it to 100.62 kilos with newts. Um, eight now 81.45 kilos of newts into that shipping canister. Will you please tell me what we're doing? Turning a rather difficult problem into a much simpler one. Now, instead of an extremely incriminating drum full of dead downsider, all we have to get rid of is 80 or so kilos of stunned newts. But we haven't got rid of the body. Can they swim all right, stunned? Are you going to dump the newts back in? No, no, no. That would unbalance the system. It's very finely tuned. The whole point of this exercise is to keep the computer records straight. As for the body, you'll see. When she says you'll see, I was like, oh no. Oh no. Oh no. So, um, I realized when I was about halfway through I'd grabbed the wrong size shipping canister. I'll have to come back later. Give me the receipt. I'll still run this load down to disposal. I want to look up Techie there anyway. Oh, sure, all right, said the tech, brightening. Thanks. He punched up the records, put them on a data disk, and handed it over. I'll oversee the final act myself. We could have just let them go down to disposal on the regular schedule, but I keep having this horrible vision of a last-minute order arriving from Transient's Lounge and Dale opening a carton to fill it. Let's see. They remounted the float pallet. What kind of genetics project? Millisser's thing, I mean. Do you know any more about it than that? Human genetics, and in truth, I know very little more than that. Some names, a few code words. God only knows what they were up to. Making monsters, maybe? Or raising supermen? The Cetagannans have always been a bunch of aggressive militarists. Maybe they meant to raise battalions of mutant super soldiers in vats like you Athosians and take over the universe or something. Not likely, remarked Ethan. Not battalions, anyway. Why not? Why not clone as many as you want once you've made the mold? Oh, certainly. You could produce quantities of infants, although it would take enormous resources to do so. Highly trained techs as well as equipment and supplies, but don't you see that's just the beginning? It's nothing compared to what it takes to raise a child. Why, on Athos, it absorbs most of the planet's economic resources. Food, of course, housing, education, clothing, medical care. It takes nearly all our efforts just to maintain population replacement, let alone increase it. No government could possibly afford to raise such a specialized, non-productive army. How odd! In other worlds, people seem to come in floods, and they're not necessarily impoverished either. Really? I don't see how that can be. Why, the labor alone costs... It's astronomical. There must be something wrong with your accounting. Ah, but on other worlds, the labor costs aren't added in. They're counted as free. What an absurd bit of double thinking. Athosians would never sit still for such a hidden labor tax. Don't the primary nurturers even get social duty credits? I believe they call it women's work, and the supply usually exceeds the demand. Non-union scabs, as it were, undercutting the market. Are not most women combat soldiers then, like you? Are there men, Dendari? She hooted, then lowered her voice as a passerby stared. 4/5 of the Dendari are men, and of the women, 3 out of 4 are techs, not troops. Most military services are skewed that way, except for ones like Barriar that have no women at all. Oh. You are an atypical sample then. Atypical. Yeah, that's me all over. You guys, this is so good. I love this so much. Y'all had to know when I got to this point, I was going to have to take a moment because this is so beautifully done. Oh, you guys. So, the idea that raising children is taken seriously by men only on a planet where there are no women really makes so much sense. I don't, I don't, is this what it has to, like, is this what it's going to have to take? Is this what it's going to have to take? That's my question. Because, y'all, when I tell you, there are times when I just feel like dudes are never, ever going to really get it. I mean it. It's like, even when women decide to leave a relationship where a man is not pulling his weight, all that man needs to do is find either a new relationship or go to his mother or his sister, anybody that is a woman that is related, and he can find a new labor source. Because women are indoctrinated to believe that if they do not help with this kind of labor, that they are bad women. And so even if the first person he comes across refuses to help, which is very rare, he'll find somebody almost always. And just like the number of women I know who got pregnant by men who thought they really wanted a child. And then those men got hit with some reality and very quickly realized they didn't after all. And guess what? They were allowed to just leave. They could just bounce and nothing happened to them because they're allowed to do that in a way that women are not. So these women are stuck raising a child completely alone. And then the irony of it is that they are then blamed as the problem, that single mothers are the issue rather than bullshit deadbeat dads. And like the number of men that have worked for Owen, for example, that didn't want to go on the record with their paychecks because they didn't want the mother of their children to know they had a job because some of the money would be taken out for raising their fucking offspring. It's so gross to me, the fact that like men can find a way around it. I understand to a degree, like, what can we do? But the idea of bringing a person into the world, dropping off the map of their lives, and then even begrudging some of your money going to the raising of that kid, to the point that many women are accused of inflating what they are spending on their children just to get, like, quote, free money. It's so funny because, first of all, let's say some women are doing that. Good. I hope they are. This is exactly how I feel about like welfare fraud. Good. Defraud the system. Fuck them. You know, people are like, oh, it's coming out of your taxes. My taxes fund a lot of garbage. I don't get a say about that. I don't care. They're defrauding me of probably $1.20 a month. So go ahead, go nuts. But when I hear about like the tall tale of women who inflate their expenses to raise a kid in order to get more money out of the baby daddy, take them for all they're fucking worth. You have that child 24 hours a day, and that man is MIA. You shouldn't be paying for anything, frankly. And I just don't feel bad about it. And it makes me really sad how we have like no standards for fathers in a real way. We can think that somebody is like not a good dad in like on a personal level of just like, that's gross. That's disappointing. That's irresponsible. But we don't have the same societal response that we do to women raising children alone. And y'all, if anything has opened my eyes to what it is like, it has just been having a fucking dog for a couple of years. And I know that this is not a real comparison, but it's the closest I've got because I don't have children. But having the litter of puppies that we took in a couple of years ago that were all sick and having to pay for all their care, them all being in a state of emergency because they all had parvo and feeding them every 2 hours round the clock, going into debt for their medical care and having to like ask for help and donations and stuff to finance it. And we still are filing for bankruptcy because it just completely drug us under. But I couldn't not do it. I'd rather file for bankruptcy and save their lives than be financially solvent and have the deaths of their, like, have their deaths on my conscience, you know? I can't imagine what it's like to have an actual like human infant depending on you for literally everything. And now where I'm sitting, I've got a dog and 3 cats in the house. And there are days where I hop into bed at night and every single one of these animals wants to lay on me. And I just want to sleep and I am so tired. And every time that they start to all climb on me, I instantly think about my friends who are raising kids and complain about how their children won't stop touching them and how I love my kid. Of course I do. I want to hug them. I want to get, but I also would like to not constantly be in contact with another living being at all times. And most of the day, that's not an issue for me. But when I climb into bed, all of a sudden I'm like deeply aware how suffocating that must be. And, you know, just there are a lot of these women have spouses. And these dudes don't take on 50%. They take on 20%. And then they toot their own horn like they're taking on 70% because they are so unused to really doing their fair share that when they do anything, they feel like they are really like pulling their weight in a way that is insulting, frankly, to the woman who's actually doing everything. So this is just a particular like trigger for me, even though I don't have kids, just because I have been in relationships where the like dynamic domestically is not equal. And that's part of what ended my first marriage was like, I managed everything, the cooking, the cleaning, the grocery shopping, the paying of bills, absolutely everything. And then there came a point where we were about to split up, and he actually said to my face that he didn't think I could make it out by myself. And I had to look at him and be like, do you remember that when we met, I had my own apartment? You moved in with me. You've never even lived alone before. You've always lived with roommates. And even then, your parents were paying for your utilities. Do you remember that I pay the bills every month, that I do this and that? You don't even know what the password is to get into our electric bill. What do you mean I can't make it? I genuinely don't know what you're going to do. And he seemed so taken aback, like it genuinely had never occurred to him. Like he had not considered for a month. And that was the part that made me more angry than everything. It was not even the accusation itself. It was the fact that what I replied with clearly had never occurred to the man. And it just gave lie to the fact that he doesn't know what I do. He doesn't see it and he doesn't appreciate it. It's depressing. It's truly depressing. And like so many women will talk about how they'll go away for a little while with friends to get a break and they'll come home and the place will be exactly as disgusting as they left it. It's not even like the dude put in any effort while they were gone. The dude simply sat and waited for his wife to come back to do the cleaning up for him. And they think that that's not absolutely child behavior. So anyway, y'all, I could go on and on about this. I won't, but I just really, really liked this moment. So then they go to the second authorized personnel only area. She wore plastic gloves to her armpits and was clutching an unidentifiable crumpled metal object, perhaps a third of a meter long, that dripped vile-smelling brown liquid. F. Helda read the name tag over her left breast pocket. Biocontrol Warden. Her face was red and angry and terrified Ethan. Her voice cleared. Unbelievable, stupid, downsider jerks. She broke off as she saw Ethan and his companion. Who are you? You don't belong in here. Can't you read? Dismay flashed in Quinn's eyes. She recovered and smiled winningly. I just brought down the nuke cull from atmosphere. A little favor to Dale Zeman. Zeman should do his own work. And she says, not to entrust it to some ignorant downsider. Oh, I'm Stationer, born and bred. Let me introduce myself. Ellie Quinn's the name. You know my cousin Techie? He works in this department. I thought he'd be here. Oh, he's in a station. But don't go over there now. They're cleaning the filters. He won't have time to chat until after the system's back up. Work shifts are not the place for personal visiting, you know. What in the world is that? Quinn diverted her lecture with a nod at the metal object. This, you guys, it was a perfectly good emergency oxygen canister until some asshole stuffed it down an organics disposer. He must have had to smash it flat first to fit it in. Thank the gods it was discharged, or it might have blown out a pipe. Unbelievable stupidity. She stalked across the room to fling it into a bin with a number of other obviously non-organic bits of trash. You guys, I'm not trying to say that people aren't absolute boneheaded dum-dums and do things that you're like, but why? But I can't help but wonder if there isn't something significant to this. Like, either somebody might flush something in order to retrieve it from this bin later, or that somebody flushed something recently, or even the thing that she just got out of the pipes was, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I'm just sort of feeling like this has to fit into things somewhere. So let's see. I have an intermittent scheduled in 5 minutes, and the degrader is programmed to break down all the way to simple organics and vent to hydroponics. It will just have to wait. You can take yourself off and tell Dale Zeman. Half a dozen somber stationers followed a covered float pallet through the door. Quinn motioned Ethan silently to an inconspicuous seat on their own float pallet as the procession entered the chamber. Ecotech Helda hastily straightened her uniform and composed her features to an expression of grave sympathy. And they do these, like, you know, funereal speeches, and Ethan's like, actually, that feels pretty familiar. And I love when she says, do you want a final view? And this dude says, ugh, the funeral was enough. No thanks. Do you wish to stay for the internment? Absolutely not. At a look of embarrassed disapproval from his female companion, he added firmly, I saw Grandpa through 5 replacement operations. I did my bit when he was alive. Watching him get ground up to feed the flowers won't add a thing to my karma love. The family filed out, and the ecotech returned to her original, aggressively businesslike demeanor. She stripped the corpse, it was an exceedingly ancient man, and took the clothes to the corridor where presumably someone had lingered to collect them. Returning, she checked a data file, donned gloves and gown, wrinkled her lip, and attacked the deceased with a vibra knife. Ethan watched with a professional fascination as a dozen mechanical replacement parts clanked into a tray: a heart, several tubes, bone pins, a hip joint, a kidney. The tray was taken to a washer and the body to the strange machine at the end of the room. Helda unsealed a large hatch and swung it down and shifted the body on its catch basin into it. She clamped the basin to the inner side, swung it up. A muffled thump sounded from within, and resealed it. The ecotech pressed a few buttons, lights lit, and the machine whined and hissed and grunted with a demure, even rhythm that suggested normal operation. They're breaking the body down to its components and returning the biomass to the station ecosystem. Most clean animal mass, like the newts, is just broken down to higher organics and fed to the protein culture vats, where we grow steak, meat, and chicken and such for human consumption. But there's a sort of prejudice against disposing of human bodies that way. Snacks of cannibalism. Oops, slip of the tongue. Uh, so that your next kilo of pork doesn't remind you too much of your late Uncle Nettie, the humans get broken down much finer and fed to the plants instead. A purely aesthetic choice. It all goes round and round in the end. Logically, it doesn't make any difference. But you're going to let them put Okita? Maybe I'll turn vegetarian for the next month, she whispered. Shh. What are you hanging about for? Quinn smiled blandly. I need my float palette. Oh. This woman is so cranky. I really like her, actually. She just has no fucking time for anybody. And frankly, I really do get it. These sorts of jobs are so thankless. The third carton emptied with a startling thump. What the hell? Muttered the ecotech and reached for the seals. Commander Quinn turned white, her fingers twitching over her empty stunner holster. Look, is that a cockroach? Cried Ethan loudly, in what he prayed might pass for a stationer accent. Hilda whirled. Where? This is so great. Later on, Quinn is like, that was inspired. Where did that come from? But yeah, this whole thing, it's so great. I love that he is just very quick with this and is like, she seems like the kind of person that bugs would bother. So let's see. Oh yeah, here it is. So they go into this other room, cold storage access 297C. I'd like to rent a vacuum storage locker. This is for stationers, ma'am. If you go to Transient's Lounge, you can get Quinn slapped an ID down on the counter. A cubic meter will do. I want it in removable plastic. Clean plastic, mind you. Oh. Everybody just thinks she's a fucking tourist. It's very funny because if you've ever lived somewhere that tourists are like the bread and butter, so you need them but also disdain them, I think you get it, right? um so they shoot these poor newts into space where they will freeze. And I really enjoy the fact that Quinn is like, I might actually ship these to Neesmith when things calm down a little bit. Like, why not? And I hope we get to be there for that. Just the idea of him getting like a surprise package and it's full of frozen newts. I don't know what he would think of it, but it would be funny. So they go to this hostel, uh, and when they get into a room, she clearly relaxes some. Gives him a beer that she has put some like vitamin supplement in. She drinks some to show him that it's okay, but he is still a little bit on edge, understandably. He goes into the bathroom, and I love this. His stubbled chin was perilously close to pretending to paternal honors to which he had no right. Bless him. So he drinks beer while he washes. I just really want to point out the fact that he has not eaten. And Bra is like on such an empty stomach and drinking beer. He should be pretty fucked up, honestly, by this, but he is not. And they begin to talk, and she tries to be like, so tell me what's going on. He's like, fuck you, tell me what's going on. And when she just stares at him, he's just, if you want, like, he just completely wilts. I appreciate the effort, Ethan. You're trying to hold your ground, and like, I get it. It's hard. She knows what's up and you don't. You're in a very precarious spot here. So She explains about Baraputra's lab where their order was supposed to come through. And she says that it was like done on need to know, which apparently saved some lives later. I'm curious why it was done on a need to know basis because it doesn't seem like their order should have qualified for that kind of treatment. I don't it feels like like things had to have gone left at source. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if they I don't know. I don't know, but it just doesn't seem like you're just asking for ovarian cultures of a certain type. Why would it be so secret? That's strange to me. Um so apparently Millisor and his team comes in and they just fucking torch the entire place. Um and they escape with the let's see, escape right through the private army, vaporizing the lab and all contents, including most of the genetics team, quite a few innocent bystanders, and the technical records of the work done on your shipment. I gather they must have spent some time questioning the Baraputra people before they crisped them, because they got it all. Pausing only to murder the wife and burn down the house of one of the geneticists, Millisora and company vanished from the planet to turn up under new identities here just 3 weeks too late to catch your shipment. I arrived on Jackson's Hole, innocently asking questions about Athos, and they, of course, thought she was linked to this and she had to convince them she wasn't. But now they think she's working for them, the Baraputrans, to kill Millisor and his team. So she is pretending to do that, and she has started kind of by accident, which is going to at least add to her credibility here. And she's like, so what was in the boxes that was worth so much? And he's like, nothing. Like it wasn't worth that. And he explains to her how also what they got was worth even less. And she's like, okay, so somebody took your shipment. Um, and let's see. Millisor seemed to think it was this Terrence C person or whoever he is. She sighed. Whatever he is had plenty of time for it. It could have been switched on Jackson's Hole or shipboard en route to Client Station. Um, and I'll get a copy of the station docking log anyway. So this is when he asks what a wife is. And he mentions that the word husband, when she explains that, is a verb meaning to conserve resources, but there's no word for wife other than just woman, which is telling, isn't it? He asks whether the geneticist had any children, and she says yes. They have a little boy, but they just left him like a dangling loose thread, which is really weird because they made sure to kill the wife who was pregnant. Um, Millisor seemed convinced that what Baraputra's labs produced was actually intended for Athos in spite of the subsequent diversion. Now, if nothing else, I've learned in the past few months that what Millisor thinks had better be taken into account. Why Athos? What does Athos have that nobody else does? So they talk this over briefly, and she's like, well, the fact that you guys don't seem to have anything, that must be part of it. That there's like privacy there, or I don't know. Um, and it says, uh, he ran down abruptly when he found himself describing the personal troubles that prevented him from achieving his own heart's desire for a son. This woman was getting entirely too easy to talk to. He wondered anew what was in his beer. I'll tell you what's in your beer, dude. Beer. And you are on an empty stomach. It's that simple. Um, so let's see. There's a mention of potentially genetic sabotage, but that doesn't seem like it would even have worked because they would like see it coming. Um, and she asks about like, how much do you know about Jackson's Hole? Uh, and she mentions this thing here. You can get what you pay for in Jackson's Hole too, if your purse is deep enough. Want to have a young clone made of yourself, grown to physical maturity in vitro, and have your brain transferred into it? There's a 50% chance the operation will kill you, and a 100% guarantee it kills whatever individual the clone might have been. You guys, If only. Like, I don't relish the idea of killing my clone, but I would do it. I think I would do it. I just, I think I'd just have a brief convo with my clone and be like, look, we think the same way. I know we do. This is just the logical thing to do. And my clone would be like, bet. And that would be that. Ethan says that on Athos, it's considered a sin to clone because it's vain. And I love it. You're 100% right. My wish, very much vanity. Absolutely. Oh my God. Um, so she mentions that he wasn't even like, she shouldn't have rescued him, that Naismith just wanted her to like observe things, and that he might be a little irritated with her, but also he has a tendency to do things like a little bit off from his plans as well, so he'll forgive her more than likely. And when he asks about his own stuff and going to get it, she's like, do not go to your fucking room. They are going to try and find you. Um, and this is when he starts to like, he's left alone a few days in a row. He eventually finds out that she's not even locking him in. And it takes a while for him to like even test that. Um, and then he begins to worry about things. By the end of the next day, he was becoming painfully aware of the inadequacy of a cultural education that consisted of two very general galactic histories, a history of Cetaganda and a fiction holovid titled Love's Savage Star that he had stumbled onto and been too stunned to switch off. Um, he shuddered and cursed the study time he'd wasted on timidity during the 2-month voyage to Klein Station. Innocence might be bliss, but ignorance was demonstrably hell. If his soul was to be offered up on the altar of necessity by God the Father, Athos should have the full worth of it. So he asks what Milisor is doing out there. And she's like, not as much as I hoped. He hasn't reported you or Okita missing. He hasn't shown me that he has other personnel. He hasn't tried to leave the station. He's just like covering up his identity, which I think means he's going to stick around. Uh, and he's like, so how long do I have to stay? And she says, until something breaks, I guess. Just very much playing it all by ear. Um, and she mentions this thing. I finally got hold of the technical specs for that section. The protein culture vats are behind that corridor wall. I think Okita may have some sort of inorganic code response only tracer implanted internally. Some poor sod is going to break a tooth on it in his chicken Kiev any day now. That said, she is right that there really isn't a difference between feeding your vegetables and feeding your meat with it. Like, come on. Either way, whatever. Um, so finally Ethan's just starting to be like, you know what? Fuck this. I didn't do anything. I didn't do what they think I did to capture me. I didn't shoot Okita. I haven't even talked to Milisor like in a real way. And he was going to try and come at Athos for things that we don't even have. If I could just talk to him and tell him we don't have them, he would let it go. And she's like, uh, you think he would just let it go? Are you serious? At least he's male, Ethan snapped. She laughed. Ethan's temper rose to the boiling point. How long are you going to keep me locked up in here? You're not locked up. You can leave any time. At your own risk, of course. I shall be saddened, but I shall survive. You're bluffing. You can't let me go. I've learned too much. I should say you haven't learned bloody enough. You don't want me to tell the station authorities about Okita, do you? That puts your neck on the line with your own people. Oh, hardly my neck. They would, of course, have a shit fit if they found out what we did with the body, to which I might point out you were a willing accessory. Contamination is a much more serious charge than mere murder, nearly up there with arson. You guys? Oh my God, I love that so much. Murder? Contamination? Wow. fucked up. What is the matter with you? I love it so much. What can they do? Deport me? That's not punishment, that's a reward. If you leave, Athosian, don't expect to come bleating back to me for protection. I have no use for quitters, quislings, or queers. Girl, really? But you know what, guys? I say girl, really, because I'm reacting to her being homophobic. But he was like, at least he's male. He was like just so incredibly misogynist. And I'm much more willing to forgive that because I'm just like, well, the way that he was brought up on his planet. Well, she was also brought up the way that she has been brought up, but I'm not being as like forgiving for her. It's just, it goes to show how much more prepared I am to forgive misogyny in general than I am homophobia, because it just, that's the way it works in my head. Like, well, what do you expect? That's kind of telling, isn't it? So he gets up and leaves, feeling like I got the last word. But then once he's out in the hall, he's like, shit, what do I even do? So he decides that he is going to go out there and actually go looking for these guys. I can't. He found a console booth. I wish to reach a transient, Gem Colonel Louis Millisor. No such individual is registered. Has he checked out? No such individual registered within the past 12-month cycle. How about a Captain Rao? No such individual. Seti? No such individual. He stopped short of mentioning Okita and stood blankly. Then it came to him. Millisor was the man's real name, but here on Klein Station he was doubtless using an assumed one. At a loss, he wandered down the mall. He could, he supposed, just return to his room and let Millisor find him, but whether he'd get a chance to negotiate or even get a word out before being scragged by Okita's vengeful comrades was a very moot point. So, then he's walking down the hall and two dudes with painted up gem faces begin to walk past him, and I was just like, oh no. And he is so entranced with the patterns painted on their faces that he doesn't register the actual features beneath, because this is the first time he has seen these patterns in person before and is just looking at them and then all of a sudden recognizes them. And Captain Rao instantly reaches for a gun. Ethan runs. A God the Father nerve disruptor bolt crackled past his head. Ethan glanced back over his shoulder. Rao had only missed, it appeared, because Millisor had knocked the lethal weapon upward. They were yelling at each other even as they began pursuit. Ethan now remembered clearly just how terrifying the Cetagandans could be. Bruh. I love the fact that he is just so much more comfortable dealing with men that even though they tortured him for 7 hours, he's like, I would rather talk to them. I really would. Okay. So he takes a bunch of lifts and runs and changes to another lift and goes all over the place. He crossed out of Transient's lounge somewhere for gadgets on the walls that had long lists of instructions and prohibitions beside them in the tourist ghetto here were nearly anonymous. He went to ground at last in an equipment closet and lay gasping for breath on the floor. He seemed to have lost his pursuers. He had certainly lost himself. And that's the end of the chapter. So Bro is like out of firing range, but evidently now they know he's alive and walking around, and that is going to be a fucking problem. And also the fact that one of them tried to just straight up kill him and was stopped. You know, it seems like there was nobody else in the hall, but still just like murdering him in apparently cold blood in the middle of probably a monitored area. Yeah, not an awesome move, Rao. Like, calm down, bruh. But yeah, I really don't know what to expect now. And I have to assume that he has not shaken Quinn at all. She'll find him, especially after this mess. But I really wonder what the deal was with the shipment as well, because it can't have been what they ordered. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know. So Especially because like the order was like they were the lowest bidders as well. I don't know, guys. I don't know. But all right, I have got to wrap up. Thank you guys again for hanging out with me. Thank you to Jeff for commissioning this. Appreciate you a lot. I hope that you guys are enjoying the coverage. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.